Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à cet autre Lunch and Learn de Passion Whisky Québec. Today we have Fionn Cox, founder and owner of New Era Spirits. So thank you for joining us, Fionn.
Good afternoon.
Good evening for you. You're based in Ireland, so it's 5 o'clock your time.
Yes, correct.
Thank you for joining us. So I'll switch in French for a few items, and I'll come back with you in English after.
Perfect.
Donc, pour ceux qui sont avec nous aujourd'hui, comme d'habitude, si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas à les mettre dans les commentaires. Aujourd'hui, on est en live sur Facebook, YouTube et LinkedIn. N'importe quelle question relative à ce que Fionn va nous présenter aujourd'hui, n'hésitez pas. Je vais prendre les questions puis lui transférer là, dans le courant de la conversation ou à la fin. On va regarder aujourd'hui un petit peu qui est Fionn Cox, quelle est sa compagnie, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont créé. Et évidemment, on va regarder aussi les deux produits qu'on a dans le groupe de commandes actuellement en cours sur passionwhiskyquebec.com. Donc, we're back with you, Fionn.
Perfect.
Again, thank you for joining us today. We are going to talk about yourself first. Just present yourself, who you are, what makes you today being a co-founder and owner of a whiskey company. Talked about this new whiskey company that is pretty new, 2022, so 4 years old. And for sure talked about the two products that we are going to have in the import that we do with Passion Whisky Québec. So I don't want to talk more than that. You're the person we want to listen to today. So where do you come from? What makes you do like work in the whiskey industry right now? It's you're a young person usually, and you mentioned that just before when we talked a little bit. Usually in the whiskey industry, it's old people like myself create new companies or whiskey brands or things like that. So it's really interesting to understand where you come from. And yeah, go ahead.
100%. Yeah, well, thank you very much for the time, Eric. So my name is Fionn Cox, and I'm the co-founder of this brand, Element Irish Whiskey. My own background, I studied food marketing and entrepreneurship in university in Cork, which is Ireland's second biggest city. And it was really here, Eric, I fell in love with Irish whiskey. And to tell you the truth, it wasn't the whiskey itself. It wasn't, I love consuming whiskey. It was a couple of things, one being the growth in the Irish whiskey category, so
Okay.
Over the last kind of 10 years or so, Irish whiskey has been growing phenomenally. I think it was the second fastest growing category for many years. And that really thought was very interesting, that no matter where you are in the world, this little tiny country on the side of the world was producing whiskey that was being sold globally, I thought that was quite interesting. And obviously from the geographical indicator standpoint, it meant that, to be called an Irish whiskey, it needed to be made in Ireland. So I thought that was quite interesting. Second piece was around the innovation within the category, like Irish whiskey, for the most part, it's a world of history and heritage and tradition. Yeah. Always name place names and family names. And when you kind of look at the marketing, it's primarily targeted towards, a male audience, but more of a historian, And I think when you look at the data, there's a kind of a new era consumer emerging around Irish whiskey. And that is, male and female, but also, consumers who grow up in an era of, authenticity and transparency. And sometimes I think the marketing jargon, they could probably be developed on ChatGPT. It doesn't really hit home, so we really want to pride ourselves on doing things differently, being very authentic, being very transparent around our products. And that's really, how Element Whiskey was born. So I put together a few slides, so I might just run through a few little bits on that if that suits you. Kind of probably touched at it already as to, who we are. but also then, the innovation and the open innovation concept that we have kind of coined, as well as then, our fabulous whiskies and a little bit more on them. So, as I mentioned there, we wanted to create something new. So when we kind of got in looking at Irish whiskey, I met my business partners, and we started, working out, number one, what we were going to do, and number two, how we were going to really do something different, and to tell you the truth, Eric, initially we thought we would build a distillery, and we're very, very lucky these days we didn't go that route. But we started looking at the blending and the bonding and how all that works around the cask finishes and things like that. And, if you look at how whiskey is made, it always follows the same process that is, a master blender, usually, a single guy or a team of people who pick out the blends, and then they kind of come back and tell you, this is the best because we did this. And, one of my core business partners is a tech background, and we started exploring open innovation. And really what it is about using the power of the crowd. So essentially, instead of making whiskies internally, it's about looking externally and collecting data and feedback from, various different stakeholders. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But, us as a brand, we were premium, we're contemporary, and also innovative in the back end, not just a good looking bottle. We wanted the identity to kind of match what was going on in the background. So, why we exist, I think I probably touched off this, but definitely that new era consumer. I kind of mentioned that there was a big growth in Irish whiskey. And if you look at who's really consuming Irish whiskey, it's the male and female. And, they'll care about things like authenticity and transparency. And that was really who we wanted to kind of target. The how is in regards to the open innovation process to try and collect data and feedback from many different stakeholders, and the output, the what, it's a smooth, accessible, versatile portfolio of Irish whiskies that always has an innovative twist. So there's always something, cool or something different to add that complexity onto, some of the flavor profiles, which I will get into. So a little bit more on the open innovation. I won't bore you completely, but really what, as I said, it's about looking outwards. So, not having an internal team. And we follow a kind of a 6-step process, which looks at listening to the community, the feedback, identifying the different trends. We then develop the prototypes with our partner distillery. We send out little samples, we test, we get feedback. In some instances, Eric, we actually sent out a pipette, and we asked people to blend their own with the samples and give us back their feedback blind initially. Then we tell them what the casks were, how does that change? We gather up all this feedback and we release. And, this is kind of something that's new within the whiskey industry, but, it's a concept born out of technology, the idea of open source. See some giants there on the bottom, the likes of Apple, Ben & Jerry's and Lego. These guys all implement this kind of process. So we wanted to try and take that kind of, idea and bring it to whiskey. And that's what the open innovation piece is for us, which is something we're very proud of, as different.
No, that's nice. Few questions about what you just mentioned. A few things. In fact, you talked about the partner for distillation. So do you have multiple partners right now, or you just pick one that you play with their casks, their new mix spirit maybe, or how do you work right now? And do you plan to have maybe multiple partners in the future if you don't have?
Right now? Great question. So as you probably know, Eric, like 10 years ago, there was about 6 distilleries in Ireland. And now, there's probably, there was over 50. I know that there are probably 1 or 2, maybe gone back the way, but, massive growth in distilleries. Exactly. So our real vision is that, as we grow, we can actually look to source different whiskies from all different distilleries within Ireland. And essentially, being that independent bottler or blender, it gives us the capacity to source, the best whiskies on the island of Ireland, and then, even innovate from the blending of them together, but then also with the casks. So right now, today, we work with a fantastic distillery in Ireland. It's called Great Northern Distillery. We're super transparent about this. You'll actually find we're one of the only brands, Eric, that on the back of the bottle, we actually explicitly state the distillery the whiskey came from. I think that kind of comes in on the transparency piece.
And that's really great. That's really great to have that, because for whiskey lovers, we like to know where the product comes from, how it's made. For many people, maybe they don't care, but the fact that you mentioned that is really a nice thing for you, and show that you also, I'm sure you want to have the more sales with a lot of people, but you also target whiskey lovers specifically with these people who want to know more about what they're drinking. So that's nice.
Yeah, no, 100%, and I think definitely the concept around, the open innovation piece, but also the innovation within the blending and bonding, it's something new, and I'm definitely think it's good to be transparent. We're not trying to hide anything, which I think is good.
Nice.
Super. So just a little bit on the production process. I won't bore you on how to make whiskey, but there's the steps. And I think, again, in being very transparent about it, we innovate on the final two steps, which is really that maturation in regards to the casks, and then the blending of those casks. So, I think I probably touched off it there, but the idea is that, we can source any of the kind of, different styles of Irish whiskey, and then we can play around with blending different casks together, blending different ages together, and in the future we hope to definitely work with blending different distillates from different distilleries together. And I think as well, I probably might have mentioned kind of off the call, Eric, but again, if you look back at the history of Irish whiskey used to be huge, and then over time, due to several factors to do with trade wars and all various famines and things like that, the industry really shrunk, and only over the last 10 years a renaissance has really happened, and that's where the growth of distilleries. But if you look at, say, somewhere like Scotland, where the whiskey industry is much more mature, there's a ton of independent bottlers and blenders, working out of different distilleries. But in Ireland, it is only a handful really working on this model. So I think that the future looks really bright. And in order to innovate within the category, it needs guys like us who come in with a different kind of, vision on it, and taking it into creating something, new without creating the distillate themselves. So definitely that piece of the maturation and the blending is where we pride ourselves on the innovation, which is cool. So a little bit on the sorry, Eric, go ahead.
No, that's fine. And do you define yourself more like independent blenders? I can imagine, because you really, in that case, just use one source of whiskey, and then you play with different cask, and the independent bottler, I would say not all, but many of them are really proud to say it's a single cask, it's one cask, so they don't blend things for a lot of them in Scotland anyway. So do you think about yourself more like an independent bottler or independent blender?
Yeah, good question. I think everybody understands independent bottler when you say it. Yeah. They're like, okay, you don't distill it, but you do something, unique. But definitely within the blending piece, I think that probably maybe is a term we probably should use, Eric, because it is to do with the blending as well. But definitely, I think, as I said, taking different distillates, different casks, different ages, different styles, and I was amazing to learn, Eric, as well, obviously, when I got into the business, about how small changes in the composition of the whiskey, for example, a 5% sherry swapped out with a 5% Pedro Jimenez cask, like the impact that can have, so really when you look at, like, say if you have 4 casks of whiskey and you look at changing, different proportions and percentages, you can really come out with like an incredibly different result, and that was really interesting when we did our open innovation process on the single malt. There was very much different feedback from different people. But, even just blending the 5% differences can have a huge impact on the final result. So I think it's super interesting. You can get really, really nerdy on it, on how it all works. But definitely, I think it's a massive world out there on what can be done with where we stand at the moment within the Irish category.
Yeah. And do you plan to have, like, right now we have 2 products in the group, and do you plan to recreate each version in a different way, or you will try to have like version 2, 3 really similar, so try to blend things to make it the same, let's say, kind of a flavor for the lore or the fusion, the 2 products, so they stay the same, or you will play with that and try different flavors, different things for the 2 products?
Yeah, so great question as well, Eric. So you'll see on our best-selling product, which is the Fusion Series 1.0, the way we very explicitly wrote on it 1.0. And the idea here is that it's like software. So, in the future, if we want to take the recipe of this blend and make some small adaptations, for example, if we changed out the stout component and we added an IPA cask, and what we do there is that it would be still the Fusion Series, but it would become 1.1, and it's like software where it's updated. But if we were to create a brand new blend with different characteristics, different whiskies, that would become release 2.0. And the idea is that you can make small changes, but keep it within the same category. Again, to be very transparent, Derek, we're still very small. So the idea that, having a warehouse full with 25 SKUs under the same thing, we haven't got there yet. So we have our core range, and then we have many different creations in the background. My office here has bottles like this with different blends, and we think as we grow, we will make variations to the existing, but also look to create some, new whiskeys.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah.
Cool. So just about the whiskey then, I think we touched off it here. So we have 2 kind of core products in our range that are available to purchase. The Fusion Series, this is our first release. It was our first kind of try at open innovation. We went out, we spoke to bartenders, industry people, experts, whiskey societies. We gathered feedback. It was very messy, to be honest. It was a big Excel sheet with all different data pieces. And then we went to the distillery and we said, look, this is what we want to create. And to tell you the truth, Eric, it was a huge success. So we were really, the feedback was incredible. The idea without the master blender was quite interesting, because I know some purists might say, hey, without a master blender, can you make good whiskey? We also submitted this, Eric, into some of the whiskey competitions, and we received, 92 points at the ultimate at the the IWSC, which is in San Francisco, and then also like 93 points, I believe, at the Ultimate Spirits Challenge, that ranked us in the top 5 of blended Irish whiskies. So it was really showing that the open innovation concept worked. And that proof of concept really kind of allowed us to drive on with that. So really great whiskey. It's a blend of single malt and single grain. We use 4 different casks. So you have the kind of the sweetness and of the kind of ex-bourbon barrel, but then you have some kind of bourbon characteristics coming through with the Virgin American oak. And I think the Irish stout cask then kind of really gives a nice balanced kind of toffee flavors coming through on the bottom. So what we've really kind of done here, Eric, again, is we've built on what Irish whiskey typically is, and that is the ex-bourbon and the Oloroso sherry. So they're kind of the most common cask used, and we've added complexity with the virgin oak, bringing that vanilla sweetness, and the Irish stout. And yeah, really great whiskey. And I think the versatility is something that's amazing. It could be consumed neat on the rocks, or mixed and in a cocktail, and me personally, I don't like mixing it with drinks like Coca-Cola, to be honest, but if people like to do it, it does hold, maybe with on a hot day when it's like ginger ale, I go as far as, but really, a very accessible and versatile whiskey that we have.
Yeah, and what is really nice also for us is the price here in Quebec is really accessible also for people here uh, who are listening to this. It's around $100, so it's pretty accessible compared to other new companies, new products, first release that are sometimes more like around $200 for their first release. So that's really really nice to be able to access it at this price. Yeah.
Super.
So yeah, for the cask for this product, basically, do you have like the proportion, or I'm going too much in the detail and you don't want to share that?
No, I do, absolutely. So what we have is it is 85% grain, and it is 15% malt. And to, again, Derek, to get into the intricacies of it, we actually use 5 different casks, but it's
Okay.
of 4 different types, because the Virgin American oak cask is used twice, one time
Okay.
on the grain and one time on the malt. And what we have is the ex-bourbon represents 30%. The Virgin American oak grain component represents 55%. And then we have 5% malt in Oloroso, 5% malt in Irish Stout, and 5% malt in the Virgin Oak again. So there's kind of 5 whiskeys are used, if you like,
Yeah.
in the blend. But again, totally transparent, and putting the recipe out there, if you like.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And in fact, for whiskey lovers, we know there are so many parameters. So even if we have the recipe, if we try to do something like this, it will not taste the same. We don't have the same access to the new make. Each cask is anyway different. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's really nice to sharing that kind of information. It for whiskey nerds like we are, it's nice to have that. So we try to taste your ingredients in the
Mm-hmm.
bottle than in the whiskey. So that's nice. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so this is the fusion, and you have also and we have also the chance to have the lore series that is a bit different. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our Lower Series single malt. So this is 100% Irish single malt malted barley, and this one was developed on kind of phase 2 of the open innovation model, Eric. So what we actually did here was we followed again the kind of 6-step process, but here we went and we actually, as I mentioned, got the little samples. So 50 mil. Well, it came in at 5 liter. We broke it up into 50 mils and we sent it out to a sample of people to get their feedback. So we got them to taste it blind, tell us what they thought. Then we told them the casks, what do you think, to eliminate that bias. And then we actually asked them to blend their own based on certain parameters. And the result, we've a beautiful single malt that's the base spirit is in an ex-bourbon, and then we've Madeira and a sweet Muscatel cask finish coming in there. So really, for those who are into single malt, it's very much a kind of a fruit-forward whiskey, very good depth and character in there. I think you'd have notes of kind of vanillas, but more, dried fruits, apricots, those kind of notes come to the palate. And the other thing I should mention as well, Eric, you'll see the flavor wheel, which is this thing here in the middle. It was on the Fusion series as well.
Yeah.
And what that is, it's on the back of every bottle. And what we decided here was that, with many whiskeys, there's often a big book of text, like massive amounts of words on the back.
Yeah.
And we kind of felt that, perhaps people who are really into it will read it, but often people don't read it. And we said, would there be a cool and accessible way to show the flavor profiles that can be expected within whiskey? And that's how we came up with these. Again, these notes were developed based on the feedback. And 9 obviously being the strongest note, which we have floral freshness, caramel, vanilla, kind of cafe latte, citrus fruits. And we put this on the back of every bottle as an accessible and kind of fun way to see, what flavors and notes you can expect within the whiskey.
Yeah, that's a nice way to present it, as you mentioned. Instead of reading like 2-3 paragraphs of a lot of words trying to explain many things. No, it's direct to the point. It's visual. So personally, I pretty like this way to present it. So yeah, a nice view there. And you mentioned again this way to work of sending small bottles. People try to taste them and then try to do their blends. And um, the next question is pretty. It's for myself. How can we participate in this for the next versions? And I'm sure people from the Passion Whisky Québec group would like to do this as well. Is it something that is possible outside of Ireland or?
Yes, 100%. I think if you go to our website, Eric, elementirishwhiskey.com, there's a box at the back that says, get involved. There's also a pop-up. And the idea is that when we do the next process, we're going to select from random people who have signed up to that box, and we're going to send out samples to be involved in the next one. So definitely for anybody listening, if you'd like to get involved, please go onto our website, put in your email address, and for the next process, we will be going at random to select some people to be involved.
Really interesting. Yeah, I will definitely do that, and I'm sure many people from the group will do it as well.
Yes, and everybody loves free whiskey, Eric.
Oh yeah, for sure. On top of that, for sure. But just to participate in this process, it's nice too. And probably we will learn a lot from there as well. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Great. So yeah, we do have access to these two products, so that's really nice. I'm really looking to taste them and see by myself how you make it happen, yourself and the group make it happen. And am I right to say that we can expect a little bit more flavors than usual Irish whiskey with the use of different cask and everything? It's not what we usually expect from an Irish whiskey. It's really smooth and not a lot of big flavors or different things in there. It's pretty, yeah. I don't like to use the word smooth, but more on the floral notes basically, and not a lot of other things around. Am I right to say that?
Absolutely. No, for sure. It's a bespoke blend. I think definitely the use of the Madeira and the sweet Muscatel cask, even those blended together, bring about very unique kind of fruit, floral freshness, but while maintaining the kind of, the robustness and the mouthfeel of something like the single malt, So, you can expect I should mention they're non-peated whiskies as well, Eric. So there is no smoky flavor, but definitely has that kind of, deeper characteristics that you'd expect with a single malt, but kind of bringing a little bit more of that, floral freshness, fruit notes through, and, maintaining a thing. It's still very smooth, considering it's 43% ABV, so 86 proof. You need to be careful opening one on a Friday evening. It goes down quick, but really fantastic whiskey. Yeah.
So yeah, 43%. So do you chill filter them, or it's not chill filter?
All non-chill filtered.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think
natural color as well, I suppose.
There is caramel added.
Okay.
And that was, we're again transparent about that, primarily due to the consistency. I think, as you mentioned, one batch to the next batch, can be scope there in the casks. So there is an added color there. Another thing I should actually mention, Eric, is that when we brought out the lore series at the very start, it was hand numbered. So we did a batch of like around 500 bottles of whiskey to test, because it was, very much, again, following this kind of innovative approach. And again, the feedback was so incredible. The new bottles, we had to get rid of the numbers, because When you get to the numbers of into the thousands, it's not really a thing, but it's very, I think it was cool from a collector's. There's a few of them in existence in some countries I've seen,
Okay.
you know, that the hand numbered. But again, I think it's showing the quality, you know, that it was a test, and that's something again where we're very much proud to do. It's that, you know, we're happy to test out something, you know, release it, see how it goes, gauge feedback. If feedback is positive, you know, it might come to our core range. And if it's people are like, you know, I think it could be better, we go again and we try. I mean, experiment and create new things. But I think it's an interesting one as well.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, time flies. It's already 30, almost 32 minutes, but few more questions for you. So the bottles that we will get here in Quebec with that group, are they the first one that you sent to Canada, or there are some you already have some customers here, or get some orders from other provinces, or?
Yeah, so they will be the first bottles ever in Quebec. We did get a special listing with the LCBO in Ontario for the Fusion, and there was some good sales there. But regards to the lower series, there will be the single malt. These will be the first ever in Canada. We've never had a bottle of this in Canada before, so definitely something special.
Absolutely, absolutely. We like that. We like that.
Yeah.
And do you plan to come in Canada or Quebec province in a near future to meet people, to do tastings? Is that a plan for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I definitely think that it's in our sights. We've have some other markets and various things that we'd like to get involved in, but definitely, you know, I think in the near future, we'd hope to get out there. And, you know, we also have ideas, Eric, of building whiskeys for particular countries, you know, our states. You know, we could go to Quebec, we could get you guys together. We say, hey, let's build a whiskey based on, you know, the palate of Quebec and use that to create Irish whiskey. So we've lots of ideas in the background, you know, maybe too many sometimes when you're a startup business, but absolutely, Eric, you know, I think we want to get over there to Canada, and, you know, I think anybody who picks up a bottle and shows the support will definitely have them in the future, you know.
That's nice. That's nice. We will be happy to have you here and do some tastings with the group for sure. If it's in your plan, let us know and we'll organize something. So yeah, so thank you very much for your time. It's really appreciated. We learn many things from you and your company. I'm sure we can talk for another hour about whiskey and the industry, and I still have many questions, but we have to stop for today. And we can maybe do another lunch and learn like this with you in the future for the release 1.2 or the release 2.0
Yes.
or something like that when we do another order. So again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And we are looking forward to send you this order and taste these products. So thank you, Fionn.
Absolutely. No, appreciate your time, Eric. Thank you very much.
Thank you.